everyone. This is John Daly. I'm here again with Bernie Goldberg for another episode of the No BS Zone. How's it going today, Bernie?
So far, so good, John.
Good. So today we're going to talk about a topic that both Bernie and I have written about, the revelations that have come out and continue to come out in the lawsuit that Dominion Voting Systems has filed against Fox News. Legal documents have been released that include internal emails, texts, and even sworn testimony showing that top people at Fox, out of concern for losing viewers after the 2020 election, were lending on-air legitimacy to Donald Trump's rigged election campaign, while also acknowledging behind the scenes that they didn't really believe it at all. So, Bernie, you were a longtime fixture at Fox News, and I know you read all 179 pages of that initial filing. What was going through your mind as you reviewed what Dominion had put out there?
Well, from a journalistic point of view, that this is a big story. And then when I started thinking about beyond the things they did and the things they said, it occurred to me that Fox isn't simply a place its most hardcore viewers go to get news and information. Fox News is a news channel, but they don't go there just for news. They go there to feel safe. They go there to be, in their view, to be respected because they don't get respect from the other news organizations, the more liberal news organizations. Except that's a myth. They're not respected at all at Fox. Fox knowingly, intentionally misled, I'll say misled instead of flat out lied to their audience. They said one thing off camera, behind the audience's back about how Sidney Powell, the president's lawyer, was nuts, how they didn't trust Giuliani. They didn't trust any of these people, but they put them on anyway because they didn't want to lose the audience. That's not respect. That's pandering. You don't lie and mislead people. You respect. And another thing that occurred to me, John, and this is a broader point, but I'd like to get it out. A lot of viewers don't even understand what a news organization is supposed to be about. I spoke to a guy the other day, just the other day, with an advanced degree, bright guy. He said, I don't watch Fox anymore. Haven't watched them since 2020 because they got too soft. People think that and it's crazy, but people think that a news organization is there to give them the kind of information they crave, they desire, the kind of information they want. And that's exactly what Fox does. And they do it for money. Which leads me to my final point in this segment anyway. And that is, regardless of how the trial turns out, and winning a defamation case is not easy. Fox may lose this case, but Fox is guilty nonetheless. They're guilty of journalistic malpractice. And what I wonder is what's going to happen after the trial? If they win, are they going to celebrate? That would be obscene if they celebrate, because if they win, they'll win only because the First Amendment gives broad leeway to journalists to get things wrong, to behave like jerks. The First Amendment protects all that. Doesn't protect you if you knowingly promote false information. Is Suzanne Scott, the CEO of Fox, going to get fired? Hannity and Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham, Maria Bartiromo, they're not going to get fired. Are their producers going to be sacrificial lambs? Maybe. But I'm very interested not only in what happens at the trial and the outcome, but what happens after the trial.
I think I read an article the other day, a column the other day from a conservative writer who kind of made the point, what the only thing that may change after this are maybe stricter policies on internal communications, on people texting each other. That
Yeah,
might be the only lesson.
you know what? As crazy as that is, that's a good point.
Yeah, it really is. It's kind of funny, people make the point too. I guess, and I don't know this personally, but one of the more standout text communications was between Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham, and Sean Hannity, who, from what I understand, don't actually like each other in real life. So that was sort of notable that they have a little chat room set up. But
At
like
least
you, I found this.
they have
Go
one
ahead.
thing in common. They have one common goal. Don't lose your audience. do whatever you have to do to appease the audience. They create Roger Ailes, as I said recently in an off the cuff, Roger Ailes created an audience from out of nothing. He created an audience. He also created a monster. That's why they were emailing and texting each other, even though they don't especially like each other, because they were concerned about one thing. We may be losing our audience to Newsmax and OAN because we told the truth about the Arizona election. That's ground zero in all of this. They told the truth. They got it right. They got it right early, but they got it right, and the audience was outraged. Follow
It's
me.
true.
Outraged over the truth.
I know, I know. And like you know, I found the details as I read through that document pretty appalling. At the same time, I got to say I didn't find them all that surprising. Unfortunately, you know, I mentioned this from time to time. I've done it on here and also in my writing, but I do know a few people at Fox, both former and current employees, people I've met through writing here, you know, over the years. And I've heard a number of these types of stories really since the beginning of the Trump era. I'm talking about hosts and contributors saying one thing on air, and then once the cameras cut to commercial, saying exactly the opposite. And they reason, you know, I think we've said why. You know, the reason they do it is that to remain in good professional standing with the Fox audience, because unless you're sort of the liberal foil, you know, which they have a few of on the network, if the audience turns on you, your days at Fox can well be numbered. And Bernie, you know something about that. You know, the Fox audience was not appreciative of you telling them the truth about Trump in those early years of his administration.
Right. At a real news organization, you don't let the audience call the shots. You call the shots. And if the audience doesn't like it, well, everybody wants ratings, even traditional old school news organizations that weren't especially biased. I mean, they leaned left, no question, but not like cable. Uh, even even then, you didn't let the audience determine what you covered, and you didn't cover things because that's what the audience wanted to hear. I know that sounds incredibly old-fashioned at this point, because the very opposite is the business model of cable news. I mean, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, they have one thing in common. They do pander to a particular audience. Fox and MSNBC being the worst, but they pander to an audience and they do it for money. They've given up, as David French, the new columnist at the New York Times, pointed out. Now, I'm going to try to get this quote exact. They've sacrificed their integrity for a audience share. They've sacrificed their integrity for ratings, and they have no problem doing it. That's the part that really gets to me. They're not ashamed. They're not troubled. This is what happens when you hire a bunch of people who have never covered a fire, never covered a city council meeting, never covered a train wreck, and you put them on in prime time to pontificate. This is what you get.
No, that's true, and that brings up a good point too. Something else I was gonna mention. So, I mean, it's pretty clear to me in this story, and it's also I've seen this with past Fox News controversy, like Tucker Carlson's Patriot Purge special. That's that people on the actual news side of Fox just aren't respected by the network's top executives and top commentators. The news people are seen as the troublemakers at times like these for wanting the Fox audience to know the truth, even if that truth isn't what the audience wants in that particular moment. And that sounds like your takeaway as well.
Yeah, Jackie Heinrich, White House correspondent. I mean, I don't know her. I don't know if how, she seems like a straight shooter. She's on the White House lawn. She seems to be giving the news. She fact checked a Trump tweet about the stolen election and all that. She was reprimanded. Chris Stirewalt, the head of the decision team at Fox on election night, he called the shot that gave Arizona to Joe Biden, and he got it right. What was his reward? He got fired. Bill Sammons, the Washington bureau chief, stood up at a meeting and said, "Look, we got it right." He got fired. He lost his job. This is obscene. I mean, I'm not going to go on and on and on because if I do, I'm going to say the same thing over and over again. This is obscene. This is not what a news organization does. And you know what's the worst part? The audience doesn't care. The audience
No.
that's still there, there is they're so biased. They're so into the tank. They're so anti-real news. Everything that Fox has done, they would yell bloody murder if CNN did it. Oh, CNN knew that Trump wasn't a Russian agent. CNN didn't know it. CNN wanted it to be true, and that's why they put so many stories on. But if they Fox audience has 20/20 eyesight when it comes to what the others are doing wrong. But when Fox does the same thing, when Fox gives the audience only what it wants to hear, when Fox fires Chris Steyerwalt, a serious journalist, because he got it right. Let me emphasize that. He got it right and got fired. The audience isn't saying, bring back Chris Steyerwalt. Believe me, they're not saying that.
Right.
The,
And
the,
regarding, oh, go ahead.
the audience is the unindicted co-conspirator in all of this. Everything is done for the audience. The audience is the master at Fox. The audience tells Fox what to cover. And Fox says, the higher ups at Fox say, we don't want to lose those people. We don't respect them, of course. We only say we respect them. That's a mantra at Fox, respect the audience. That's bull. So let's not do anything to offend these people. And they even probably say, they're not too smart. Let's just give them what they want because they're giving us what we want, money.
Yeah, and then speaking of that Arizona call, at the tail end of last week, we learned some more details about the post-election chaos at Fox News. The New York Times got a hold of a recorded video conference call that included top brass at Fox, top anchors Brett Baer and Martha McCallum, and some members of the Fox election team. Bill Salmon was in on that, but I don't believe Chris Direwall was. But the topic of the call was how to avoid losing viewers next time when reporting election results to the Fox audience isn't going to, it's when the results aren't what the Fox audience is going to like. Ideas were thrown around about postponing those calls in the future despite the data they have at the time in order to kind of string the audience along and keep them watching. And what struck me is that I thought, in that first legal briefing, that I think Brett Baer kind of came across as one of the good guys in there. But from what is being reported, Brett Baer even advocated at one point for Fox to reverse its correct call on Arizona in hopes of basically bringing the viewers back from where they had left, to keep them tuning in, to keep the drama alive. What were your thoughts on this, Bertie, when you heard about this?
Well, I'll be honest with you. My first thought was, I want context for that. Did he say that and immediately afterwards say, I'm not advocating this. I'm saying that would work, but it's wrong. I don't know. So I don't want to trash Brett Baer. I will say this though, that Brett Baer, as the anchor of the only serious newscast on that channel, or the most serious newscast on that channel, Brett Baer should have either sat in his chair or stood up even and say, let's get something straight. We're a news organization. I know what you're all saying here, but we're a news organization. When we call an election, we call it accurately. We try to be first, but that's not even as important as getting it right. And what I'm hearing around this Zoom conference is troubling me. And he didn't say that. He didn't say that. I'm not accusing him of cowardice. What I am saying, and I've said this before also, there are very few profiles in courage in our culture and certainly in the news business. There are very few profiles in courage, but profiles in cowardice are a dime a dozen in the political world and the journalistic world. I wish Brett Baer had shown a little more backbone, but I'm not trashing him because I don't know how he meant the other stuff that he said.
Okay, fair enough. So another sort of interesting part of this story is that it has largely been ignored by the right-wing media, including Fox News, which I understand why, even though I guess Howie Kurtz came out and said that he really wants to talk about it on his media show on Saturdays, but they wouldn't let him do that, and but that's about as much as he said about it. But in addition to that, it's really, the all the other right-wing media sites too. Very few have even mentioned this, and so I'm guessing a lot of people that really sort of rely on that side of the media may not even know this story exists. I found that just from talking to some friends and some parents that are really, Fox News diehards. They would tell their parents about this story and they had no idea what they were talking about just because to them it doesn't even exist.
Yeah, because none of these places you're talking about take news seriously. I mean, Fox could have said, Fox has a point of view in all of this. And it's a legal point of view, and it's not a crazy legal point of view. Fox's position in all of this, which they could have reported on Fox, is that we didn't do anything wrong. We're covering the news. Are we supposed to ignore allegations that voting machines were rigged to take votes away from Donald Trump and give them to Joe Biden? Are we supposed to make believe that the president's lawyer didn't say that? We're just covering the news. Now, of course, they were doing more than just covering the news. They were privately saying she's nuts, Sidney Powell, she's nuts, and then putting her on saying that the voting machines were rigged. So Fox doesn't have clean hands, but they do have a legal point of view that may prevail in a courtroom, and they could have reported that as part of their story. They could have said Fox is being sued, allegedly for uh, promoting views that our own anchors didn't believe. The position of Fox News is the following, and then say, we're not promoting anything, we're just reporting. But they didn't do that. And the crazy part is, and unfortunately you got it absolutely right, if you only get your news from Fox, you may not know what we're talking about.
That's right. I feel
People,
a little bit better because we've written about it here, so I know at least people, members of the
yeah,
site.
yeah,
But yeah,
I'm not talking about our particular audience, but
right.
if all of Fox News viewers tuned into this and were watching this, they'd say, what are they talking about?
No,
What?
that's
What
yeah.
lawsuit? What do you mean?
No, that's a good point. And like I said, it's not just Fox. It's a lot of a lot of the other websites. Whether we're talking about Breitbart, the Daily Wire, the Federalist, all these other ones. But although I'm not sure about the Federalist, I should throw them. They might have said something about it. But I think David French in that same New York Times piece you talked about, I think had a very good take on this. He wrote that media conservatives who aren't on Fox are constantly auditioning to try and get on Fox, and so if you're out there criticizing what has happened at the network, your chances of ever getting invited on and being in a position where you can promote your own work to a few million people, those go down dramatically. So I can kind of understand that. It's not an excuse, but it's an explanation, I think, why that's happening.
All right, let me say a word about who this is hurting besides the audience that doesn't care if it's hurt. I want to repeat that. The audience doesn't care if they're being lied to or not. They don't care. The hardcore audience. This is hurting serious journalists at Fox. I mean, I was a correspondent at CBS News for almost 30 years. I know who comes off as honest and true and good or not. Well, Fox has a lot of good, honest, true news correspondents. You go out into the general population, I mentioned Fox, and they're smeared along with, you know, they don't like Tucker Carlson, the people at large, but they don't have much respect for Fox hard news journalists either because they've been smeared by all of this. And the Fox management should have taken that into account, but they don't care either. They don't care either. Tucker Carlson is worth 100 congressional correspondents as far as Fox is concerned.
Right.
Oh, by the way, there are consequences that may come down the line. May. I'm not predicting any of these will, but this talk in Democratic circles, don't let any Democrats go on Fox to give any information. And Fox has a lot of Democratic viewers, believe it or not. I read, well, I'm not sure about this, but they may have more Democratic viewers than MSNBC has, believe it or not. But they may not go on Fox to boycott Fox because of what Fox did. Fox may not have any advertising during the presidential campaign from Democrats. They may hold back their money. I'm not saying that'll happen, but there's talk about that. And the biggest thing that I think could happen is Fox won't get a presidential debate as punishment for what they did. Fox won't get a presidential debate. As I say, who knows what the trial is going to produce? Who knows if Fox is going to technically win, or technically lose? But Fox is guilty. They did something wrong here. There's no getting around that. And they need to be punished for it. They won't be punished by their viewers. I would say there's an excellent chance that they won't lose a single hardcore viewer, even if they lose the case, dramatically lose the case. If the jury comes back in 10 minutes with a guilty verdict, they won't lose any of the hardcore viewers, because they don't go to Fox to get honest information. They go to Fox to feel safe, to get their own biases validated. That's their home away from home.
Do you think a question I've seen out there? So first, let me, I view Roger Ailes. He was a very deeply flawed individual. This isn't anything, I don't think, complimentary of him. But do you think this would have happened if he were still alive and he were still running the network? This chaos that went on behind the scenes at Fox after the 2020 election, and product that went out of the sphere of keeping viewers?
The honest answer is I don't know, but I don't think so. I wrote to Roger Ailes once, and I said, I need to know that I'm allowed to criticize. If I'm going to talk about bias on the O'Reilly factor, I need to know that I can criticize conservative media too. I said, Roger, out of respect, I won't mention anybody in particular at Fox News, but I need to know that I can do that. And Roger wrote back, is in writing. I still have the email on my computer. He wrote back and said, you can say anything you want, but I think liberals are worse. Fair enough. Fair enough. If he said to me, you can say anything you want. Now, I don't know if he would have meant it if I said certain, if I went over a line or something, but he did say you can say anything you want. I don't think he's Suzanne Scott. I think Suzanne Scott has no journalistic ethics at all. At all. I think Roger did. I think Roger, when he said fair and balanced, sort of meant it, but he didn't mean it the way the way old school network journalists took news seriously. Roger took it to serve a certain audience, but I don't think he would have gone this far. I don't think he would have allowed this. I don't think he would have
So
fired Chris Direwald. I don't
no,
think he would have fired Chris Direwald.
no, I don't think so either. And again, it's kind of in a weird position. I have some pretty bad thoughts about Roger Ailes, but it's I've heard this over time. I mentioned I know a few people at Fox. They sort of made that point, too, where like this, when something happens, Roger, this wouldn't have been allowed to happen if Roger were still here. And I hear that from Jonah Goldberg and Stephen Hayes. They make that point quite a bit too. But I've heard that from others. But yeah, I think that's for all his faults, and there were many. I think he took this role a bit more serious, well, quite a bit more seriously than Scott does.
He brought me in. I don't know if people know this. I don't know if they care, but he wanted me to do the media show on Fox. I turned it down. I was doing other things, and I didn't have time to work 5 days a week at Fox. I was busy with too many other things. He offered me a job after I wrote the op-ed in the Wall Street Journal about liberal bias in the news. And Fox wasn't on the air yet. It was going to go on the air later that year. He's been very good to me. But he created a monster. Roger Ailes created a monster. He was trying to give the audience a place to go to get a different take on the news. But I don't think he realized that the audience became a monster. The audience turned on Fox and said, no, no, no. You're not telling us the truth about the Arizona election. We're not here for the truth. You told us the truth, and we're leaving. We're going to Newsmax. Roger might have said, go to Newsmax. We'll get other, he might have said that. Suzanne Scott didn't say that, said the opposite. They panicked at Fox. When the audience started to abandon Fox, Tucker Carlson panicked, Sean Hannity panicked, Suzanne Scott panicked, other executives panicked. The cowards. Then, well, you know what they are? They're not news people. They're running a news organization and they're not news people. They don't respect news and they don't respect the audience, despite the mantra, respect the audience. It's a lie. They don't respect the audience.
One last question I wanted to ask about this. So a lot of people on the right who aren't part of any, media establishment other than social media, and so they feel more comfortable, weighing in on this story. These people have I've seen a lot of people making the point that what Fox has been caught doing is no different than what the mainstream media does every single day. How do you respond to that?
I want to be clear on this. That's not true. What Fox did is different from what even biased media does every day. But I understand what they're saying because no matter what the issue is, I've heard this a million times from conservatives. It's not that they're defending a particular thing that Fox did or whatever it is. I'm not talking about the election phony stuff. But they say, how come they always pick on us and they don't go after CNN or MSNBC? So there is some validity to, well, do you think Fox is the only network that does bad stuff? There is some validity to that. CNN, to a lesser extent than MSNBC, panders to their audience. They tailor what they're doing to make sure to try to maximize their audience. MSNBC certainly does it. CNN is trying to change, but under the old management at CNN, they did it too. So Fox is no different in that sense, but Fox crossed a very bright line. I've always had the impression that the crazies at MSNBC and when CNN was really biased, it's still biased, but less so today. I think they really believed the crap they were putting out. I think they really believed that Donald Trump was a Russian agent. I mean, I think they believed this. Fox didn't believe that the election was rigged. That's the difference, and that's a big difference. They were putting out biased garbage that they were too stupid to know was biased garbage or too biased to know was biased garbage. Fox knew what they were telling the audience was not true. Fox knew or strongly suspected that who they were putting on were peddling crazy conspiracy theories, and they did it anyway. So that's not the same as, how did you phrase it, John, what mainstream media does every day. That's not the same.
Right,
But I
and I guess the only
understand when conservatives say, yeah, they always come after us, but they let the liberal media get away with the same kind of thing. There's some truth to that.
No, no, definitely. Well, that's probably a good place to go ahead and end it then. I want to thank everybody for tuning in as usual. Let us know what you think in the comment section. Give us any ideas you have for future No BS zones. We're looking at some future guests as well. And Bernie, is there anything else you'd like to say to people this week?
Just what I've said before. Tell your friends about us. We'd like to talk to them also.
Great. Well, thanks again, Bernie, and thanks everyone else. I hope you all have a good rest of your week.